this video, I'm going to be showing you how to do a 3D stencil as well as putting a transfer over the 3D stencil, which can be kind of difficult because of the texture of your pattern and the fragility of the transfer. So it's a very careful process, but you can do it, and it's a really cool look. So normally I would be doing this on furniture, and so you can pretend today like this canvas is a side of a dresser or a drawer front, or we'll just call this a drawer front for today. I'm going to be using, for this part, 3D stencil part, I'm going to be using 3D Stencil Fiber Paste. This is by Redesign with Prima. And I'm going to be using, sometimes I use a palette knife, but this time I'm going to be using these, they're spread pals. They're like little squeegees that help you put on icing paste or whatever you're using to do your 3D stencils. So on our drawer front, it's clean, and I haven't painted it or anything yet. This is going to be our first step after our prep, after our sanding and or priming. I am using this kind of floral, abstract floral stencil, which I sprayed it with some stencil adhesive about, I don't know, 10 minutes ago or so it should stick. I always like to use stencil adhesive anytime I'm using a stencil. It helps so much. So I'm going to go ahead and lay my stencil on my drawer front where I want it. Tilt you down here so you can see. I'm going to make sure that I have it where I want it. And then I've got my fiber paste, and I think I'm going to use the smaller of the spread pals. This will be my first time using these, so should be interesting. It's probably very helpful. Okay, so I'm just going to scoop up some of my 3D fiber paste, and I'm just going to start applying it kind of like I'm putting cream cheese on a bagel for now. And you can get this as textured as you want it. So see how I'm using this like a squeegee and doing it very thin? I don't have to do it very thin like that. I can use a little bit more of the paste, and I can kind of smear it on a little bit more generously, and I'll have some peaks and valleys to give me that texture. So you can use as little or as much as you want. It just depends on how much texture you're trying to achieve. I think I want a kind of medium amount, so I'm going to go ahead and spread it on first, fairly thin. Then I'm going to go over it, and I'm going to make some texture where I want more texture. This is making me hungry. I feel like I'm peanut buttering bread or something. So after we do our 3D stencil, we're going to let it dry. It takes quite a while to dry. The package says 6 hours, so I'm probably going to let it just dry overnight. Just to be safe. All right, so I'm almost done spreading it where I want it, which is all over. All right, so after I got it all covered, I'm gonna go back and I'm just gonna like create some more texture by adding a little bit more paste and just kind of doing like a zigzag through the stencil. That way it doesn't just look spread on. It's got some of that texture that is the reason why you're doing a 3D stencil in the first place. So I'm just kind of going back and forth to create some of that texture. Okay, so all right, so I've got my drawer front covered. And we're going to be, after it's dry, we're going to be painting this. So it's going to look kind of like a faux finish. And then I'm going to do a transfer on it just to give it some interest. So I'm going to go ahead and slowly try to peel up. See how I'm trying to peel up here? I'll show you this way, it's easier. I'm going to pull up. That way everything kind of stays in place where I want it to be. Boop. Beautiful. All right, so at this point, I've got it. This is my 3D stencil. See the depth there? Okay, so I'm noticing that some places have some pretty high peaks that are probably going to break off anyways, so I'm just going to go ahead and dab down some of those that are just a little bit higher than I really want them to be. Just because they're going to probably break off, like I said anyways. Okay, cool. So that is how you do the 3D stencil portion. I'm going to go ahead and let that dry for at least, I'm going to go ahead and let it dry for at least 6 hours like it says on the package, and then we shall paint. All right, our 3D stencil is all dried. I let it set overnight just to make sure that it was dry completely through. And I also went ahead and after it was dry, I took a medium grit to fine grit sandpaper and I went over it lightly to get off any of those sharp edges that may have formed from our fiber paste. So I didn't want to take down the dimension, I just wanted to get off the little pokey pieces that are on there. So just a little light, go over it really lightly with just a high grit sandpaper. And then, I'm sorry, a fine to medium sandpaper. And then I went ahead and I gave it a base coat of paint, and I'm gonna blend the second coat because I wanna get as much dimension as I can out of my 3D stencil. So we're pretending like this is a drawer front, remember? So my drawer front, I'm gonna use, I used a darker color, like a minky gray kind of color. I can't remember the name of it. But then for the base coat, I'm gonna be using Driftwood and Drop Cloth by Dixie Belle. They are like a, almost like a warm beige, like a beige with a tiny bit of gray in it, and then this kind of grayish, very light gray color. So I wanted my base color to be a little bit darker in case it shows through. The more layers of color I have, I feel like that gives it some more texture and depth. So normally I paint the base color the same color as the second coat, but I wanted to try something a little bit different this time and see if I can get a little bit of more depth. So I'm gonna go over the whole piece, well, I'm gonna go over almost the whole piece with Drop Cloth. And then I'm gonna go over the 3D stenciling part in Driftwood. And it's not perfect, it's not gonna be perfect because I'm gonna be blending it. So I don't expect it to be perfectly on the stencil. But you could see how like I'm in the area of where I wanna be with my lighter color. Okay, so I think that'll work. See how I just kind of got the in-betweens, I guess. I don't know what to, I'm not sure, the non-3D sections. And then I'm going to do my 3D sections in my darker color. And you don't have to do this. You can do it all one color if you want. I'm going to be glazing this after this layer of paint. So I want to see what, I'm just trying to experiment and see what kind of dimension I can get by using a different color base coat and blending a couple colors on the top. So like I said, I'm going to be making and doing a glaze on this piece after this coat dries. And before I do that, I'm going to have to clear it, coat it with either a gloss or semi-gloss water-based sealer. So a lot of people, I think, use polyacrylic mostly as their water-based sealer, but there's all different kinds. As long as it's semi-gloss or gloss, you need that for the glaze, because when you apply it, you then have to wipe it back. And if you're using a matte or no sealer, and you're trying to do that directly on chalk paint, it's just going to soak in and look really muddy. You're not going to be able to wipe it back, and if you do, you're probably taking paint with it. So anytime you want to glaze, you want to make sure that you seal your piece first with semi-gloss or gloss. Okay, so you can see how I have my darker color on there now, and I'm going to take a dry brush, and I have my shop towel in order to wipe off excess paint from my brush when I'm blending. So when I'm blending, I like to just create either circular motions or short back and forth motions between my paint color. The bigger the motions, the further you're spreading your paint. So if you don't, want your fade super wide, then you're just going to keep these little tiny brush strokes or circular motions. Wipe off my brush to keep it dry. A lot of people use a water bottle method. I don't do that. I don't like watering down the paint, and I feel like when I spray it with the water, it always messes up the blending that I have there that I already like. So maybe I just haven't perfected that method yet, but I prefer to, if my paint dries on me, I just add a little more paint instead of squirting it with the water bottle. I think it works, just as well. Okay, so hopefully you can see. I'm just trying to blend the colors a little bit. Go in there just a little bit. Keep my brush dry. And it's just paint. If you mess up, just go back over it again and get it to where you like it. This is it's gonna be a pretty drawer front. I don't know if I should do an antique glaze or a gold glaze. Gold shimmery glaze or antique glaze. I don't know. It's hard to decide. I don't know. What would you do? Would you do antique or gold? I guess you could do both. Okay. So I am good with this for our paint job for our 3D stencil using the fiber paste. And I'm going to let this dry, and then we are going to make and apply a glaze to this. And what the glaze does is it sticks in the details, so you brush it on and then you wipe away the excess, and the glaze sticks in the details, and they're already looking pretty good, but that just makes them pop that much more. So after this dries, we'll do that. Okay, so our second coat of paint has dried, and I went ahead and I sealed it. I would usually use like gator hide or gloss or semi-gloss polyacrylic for my clear sealer coat before I glaze. So I make my own glazes most of the time. No reason really, I just kind of started out doing that because I needed some in a pinch, and I just have been doing it since. I use glazing medium. So you can get that at an art store or a craft store in the paint section. So glazing medium, and then black paint is what I'm going to be using because we're doing a black glaze. But you can make any color glaze. You can make sparkly glaze by adding you know, some glitter or pigments or mica powder. Glazes are really fun. I love doing glazes. So when you're making your own, I personally do a 1:4 ratio of paint to glaze. I use chalk paint in this, but you could also use acrylic paint, latex paint. Obviously I wouldn't use oil paint, but any other kind of paint will be fine as a glaze. So 1 part of black paint to 4 parts of the glazing medium. And it looks white, but it dries clear. So I already have my glaze made up, and when you're glazing you want to work in small sections because it'll dry on you and you want to be able to wipe away the excess. So I'm going to go over my whole, well, not my whole piece. I'm going to work in small sections. So I'm going to go over part of the piece with my glaze, just like paint it on, just like you're painting the whole thing. And make sure you get it down in the details because that's where it matters. You want it to stick in those details. And I'm just using a cheapo flat brush. So apply your glaze. I'm going to go ahead and glaze down to the bottom of this, and then we'll wipe it back. So make sure you have plenty of shop towels or clean lint-free rags on hand because you're going to be wiping away the excess, and it's going to get your cloth really messy. And you need to be using clean, dry parts of the cloth to wipe away, or else you're just kind of pushing around the glaze and you don't get the desired effect. So I've got it covered. I'm in my details where I want to be. I'm going to take my clean shop towel, lint-free, and just start wiping away. Start wiping away at that excess. And you can wipe away as much or as little as you want, as much as you think gives you the effect that you're looking for. I just kind of want mine to stick in the details, so I'm going to be wiping on all these flat parts here. Can you see how that's really, really just defines the 3D. This looks really great on some older antique pieces or vintage pieces that have a lot of carving and ornate details. It looks great. I love glazing. It just brings out so much to the details. It's just really, and it's fun. Okay, so see how See the detail, how dimensional it looks now, as opposed to here where it's a little flatter looking. There's no not many shadows or anything like that. And with the glaze, you get the shadows and highlights, and you can really see the depth. So that is how you make a glaze and use it. I'm going to go ahead and finish out the rest of this drawer front, and then we will make an attempt to Prima transfer our 3D stencil drawer front. Okay, so our glaze is dry, and I went ahead and, as you saw, I added some gold gilding wax just to kind of give it a little bit more, some shine and some interest. Metallic is my favorite, so anytime I can add gold or any other shiny thing, I pretty much do. So, like I said, we are going to be adding some flowers via Prima transfer. Redesigned with Prima makes these amazing transfers that we are going to put on our canvas / pretend drawer front. So doing this over a 3D stencil is not for the faint of heart. If you have never applied a Prima transfer before, I don't suggest that you start doing this on a 3D stencil. There's other video tutorials out there on how to apply a transfer to a flat surface. This is not for the faint of heart. Like I said, don't expect complete perfection. There will be probably some cracks, and hopefully those will fall in your details, so it will still look good and won't really compromise the beauty of your final result. So I'm gonna do some here in this corner. Well, let's do some up the side, and then we'll kind of do these in the corner maybe. We'll do these on the side first and see how they look, and then we'll decide exactly where to place the other ones. So I am using the Lavender Fields, redesigned with Prima transfer. Almost every single time I use a transfer, I like to cut the pieces apart and kind of put them where I want, but that's just me. So I have got my little stick for applicating, and then I've got a heat gun as well, which might come in handy if I'm having some problems with the adhesion. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and tilt you so you can see what I'm doing here. Wish me luck, people. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and peel the backing paper off. And normally on a flat surface, I would go ahead and press it down so that it can kind of go ahead and start to stick. But I'm not going to do that on the 3D stencil. Because I need for the graphic to conform as much as possible to the shapes. So I'm going to leave it just laid on top like this. And also, I would normally start from the center and work my way out to avoid the graphic scooting anywhere that I don't want it. But in this case, probably the graphic shifting to adjust it's going to be a good thing. So we're going to start on our edge here. I'm going to start on my edge and just rub it on like I normally would. And you got to be careful when you get to the 3D parts because, well, I guess it depends on what you use to make your 3D stencil. The 3D fiber paste from Prima Marketing that I used is not, it's not hard like plaster of Paris or some other things that you could use. So I don't want to rub any of that off. So I'm just being very careful on the 3D parts. And it seems like so far it seems like I'm having pretty good luck. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up and just press down what's already there. See if you can see how it's going here. Definitely when you're trying to peel it away. You notice I didn't go over the whole thing. I didn't go over the whole thing with my stick like I normally would, because this is one of those things you kind of, as you go, you have to really press it into the grooves of the 3D stencil, and definitely a different process than just normally putting on a transfer. So everything I've done so far is stuck pretty good. I think I'm going to go ahead and, since I'm getting into the part that's got a lot more 3D areas, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of heat. You don't want to melt your graphics, so I would do the lower setting on a heat gun or hair dryer, and don't hold it too close, and make sure you're moving your heat gun around so that it doesn't burn or melt any of the transfer. But it will just warm up the adhesive a little bit, so hopefully it'll stick better. So I warmed it up a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and start trying to get down the rest of my transfer. And I'm just doing a little section at a time, peeling it away to see if it stuck, and if it didn't, I'm going to go back over it. If it did, then great, I will keep going. So make sure you're going around all the little grooves of the 3D. What you really want to do is try to get it to catch and stick on the flat spots. And then that way it sticks, and then when we peel it away, the parts that are not on a flat spot, so the parts that are raised on the 3D area, we can kind of press down in there. And that's where we're probably going to get a little bit of our cracking in the transfer, but hopefully it will be hidden by the 3D shape, so you won't really, so it won't look bad. Perfect. So that's perfect. I'll show you in just a second. And get a little bit more down here. So again, you're really trying to get it to stick in the flat spots where it's easier to run your stick, and then you will adjust on the raised parts where you can press it down with your finger. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and show you how it's going so far. Okay, so do you see how in all my flat parts it's sticking, and then on the raised parts it's still kind of we still have to go over with our finger and press those parts down, but I'm gonna wait and do that last. Okay, so far so good. Okay, so we are almost to the end. I'm gonna go ahead and try to lift it up see what all I still need to stick. All right, boom, perfect. We didn't lose anything. So that is our transfer over 3D stencil. So now at this point, any of the parts, see how that part right there is not stuck yet, right there? I'm gonna go through with my finger and I wanna stick all of those parts and get in around the grooves so everything is stuck. I don't want anything just hanging there. So I'm gonna go through and go around all the 3D parts. You can use a fingernail, you can use a stick again. See how it's conforming to those 3D areas? And you still get the full effect of your graphic. It's just got some texture. You just got to be really gentle. And then I'm going to take my stick and just go around and make sure that everything is stuck. And like I said, this is a part where you may experience some of the parts cracking, but if you're using your finger to push the graphic into the details, you'll probably get the cracking like in the details, so it won't even show. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a little bit more heat. Again, low heat setting, quickly run it over and don't leave it in one spot too long or you're gonna melt your graphic. Okay, so that is my Prima transfer on my glazed and waxed 3D stencil. So I'm going to go ahead and put a few little more flowers on there, and then I'm going to seal with clear. I'll probably use polyacrylic on this one, maybe. No, I'm going to use wax because I've already got some wax on here. So I'm going to seal with clear wax and then be done.